I'm Brandie Nolan. I am from Moultrie, Georgia. I grew up here. I'm a school teacher here. I'm married to Jason Nolan. We've been married for 17 and a half years, and we have a son named Braden. I grew up coming to church here. I was baptized here. Church has always been a main focus in my whole family life. My mom was a Bible class teacher. She had two older sisters, and she taught them. She taught myself in cradle roll. My dad was not a Christian early on in my childhood, but then he did become one probably when I was around 8 years old, and has been faithful since. I remember the day that I was baptized. My mom was at home with my oldest sister, and I'd filled out this little card that we have in the pew in front of us, and I put on there, I want to study about being baptized. I want to be baptized, and I put in the collection plate when it came around, and my uncle Bobby Jean found my card, and shortly after he called my parents, Kelly Wheeler, who was the preacher at the time, called my parents, and he came over to see, was I ready, because I was 9 years old, and he just wanted to make sure, did I understand what I was talking about? Was I ready? So, and he gave me this analogy, and being that I'm now 38, it has stuck with me for almost 3 decades. He said, Brandie, what you're wanting to enter into, what you're believing you're ready for, is if you're grabbing a dog by the tail and you're spinning this dog around and around in the air, what's going to happen when you release that dog? And I said, well, it's going to come and it's going to attack me. And he said, you're right. And what you've done is you've grabbed a hold of Satan and you're fixing to throw him, and he's going to come after you like a vengeance. And he said, you've got to make sure that you're ready for that. You don't know everything yet. And, he's like, it's one thing that, over time you're going to have to study and become, but you know the steps of salvation. And we talked, and I believe Mr. Kelly was there for probably an hour or so. And that night, we came to church, and at the invitation song, I was baptized in that same building. 13 years later, I would meet my husband at a gospel meeting. And so, it's just my whole world, my whole life had centered around that church, the old church building. Since then, we built a new one. There were two things I always wanted outside of my faith. And that was, number one, to be a teacher. But more important than that was to, number two, be a mom. And so once I got married, I was already working on my education degree. And I was excited. I was like, hey, now I get to work on the motherhood part of it. My uncle, who married us, my Uncle Jerry, had told us, however, that when we got married, to wait, because I got married young. I was 21 years old when we got married. And he said, make sure you have that firm foundation before you put a child into it. And I said, okay, that's fine. I can deal with that. We can finish school, and then we can work on a family. And that's when things started to get rough. After about 4.5 years, we started trying. The first 6 months, didn't have a child, and we knew early on, it's no guarantee right off the bat you're going to have a kid. But we had prayed for it. After 6 months, it was more of a yearning to God, I want to be a mother. We decided that at my next appointment with the doctor that we'd discuss it. So that was about 4 months after we'd started trying. So I went to the doctor that November. He said, well, we'll put you on fertility treatments. We'll start that. We'll do blood work, and we'll start some fertility treatments with you just to see, what's going on, because you've been trying for long enough. A couple months go by, I go back to the doctor, and he says, well, let's up it, let's increase it. It's starting to get frustrating, because now we're approaching a year that we've been trying to have this family so we could raise kids up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. It started to get tough. I never questioned God. It was more of a, what am I doing wrong scenario? We're still continuing on the course of the fertility treatments. Medicines went up, hormones went out of control, and we were still progressing. And 8 months later, I'm still not a mom. We went back to the doctor, and he said, all right, I'm going to do laparoscopic surgery, and let's just see if it's something that is going on that we can fix surgical. And so we're like, hey, okay. And he said, and matter of fact, the first 2 months after this will be the prime time for you two to get pregnant. And, we're like, all right, this is God's timing. This is what God said, said was going to happen, in our plan. We just didn't realize it. We go in for the surgery, and he noticed something in the surgery that made him go ahead and biopsy some eggs. He said, you need to come in. And I actually talked to the nurse. She had said, the Dr. Sharon needs to come in and go over your results. And so I said, okay, and we're still, in that month and a half window left of getting pregnant. And so I didn't think anything about it. And I go in, and they take me to his office, and he walks in the room, and he said, you're alone. And I said, yeah. And he was like, Jason didn't come with you. Your husband's not with you. And I said, well, no. I asked, and they said no. And he said, well, I think this is a conversation that we need to have as a unit. And just the way he said it, I knew. And I said, it was a question, it was a sentence, it was everything together. I said, I can't have kids, can I? And he was silent for what seemed like an eternity, but it was probably just a couple seconds. And he said, I'm sorry. Your eggs, when the results came back, they're not viable. And we had prayed so hard, and God was saying no. But also, at the same time, and all these emotions, part of it was peace. I knew that something wasn't going to happen, and I was okay, because I had my faith in God, and he was going to see us through it. As I left the doctor's office, and I had about a 25-minute drive home, and I got to thinking, how do I tell Jason? We can't have a kid, and it's my fault. My body just won't let us do it. But for those who know me, I'm a planner. I come up with a plan. I'm like, you know what? There are so many kids out there that need adopting. I don't care if it's local. I don't care if I have to go halfway across the world. I'm okay with adoption. And so I prepared myself. I prayed, because you have to have faith in God through all this, or you will go insane. And so when Jason came home, I told him that, hey, the results weren't good. In the laparoscopic surgery, he had found some other things, but when he biopsied my eggs, those results are what were the end all for us getting pregnant. I said, but we can adopt. That's when our world kind of crashed twice in one day. Jason said, I don't think I could ever adopt a child. And that's when it hit me that, you know what, Brandie, number one, you've been selfish. You've come up with this plan all on your own. You haven't consulted anyone. Yes, you have this desire, this want to be a mother, but you have a spouse you have to think of as well. I went to bed praying and crying that night. I never questioned God throughout any of this. I'd realized that, it's not God's fault, and ultimately I realized it wasn't my fault, but it was the whole realization that God had given me this answer of no. And I just had to pause and had to think and had to reflect on Jason and I as a family and what was best for us. And if he didn't want to adopt, it was going to be okay. I would say probably within a week, we were back to normal. If we hadn't had God through that, I don't think we would have made it. So during this time frame, we had started going to a larger congregation in Valdosta. There was a couple who had also started going to church in Valdosta at that point in time. And shortly after then, they got pregnant with their son, Jay. When Jay was young, we would keep him just on Sunday afternoons or sometimes for Saturdays. Eventually, after he did turn 1, we started keeping Jay a little bit more for him. And there was one Sunday afternoon that we were going back to church, and Jay was in the car with us, and Jason said, I don't think adoption would be such a bad thing. By this time, probably 3-4 years had passed. I was befuddled. I had no idea what to say, and I have something to say for everything. We found out through relatives that Jason had an uncle that was raising his grandchild. And all this time we're looking at adoption agencies. I'm researching different ones. And so we started keeping this little boy for Jason's uncle. He was about 5 months old when we started keeping him. And actually it started out as a Saturday in January. His uncle was sick, needed a break. He was older, had some health problems of his own. His uncle had something he needed to do the next weekend. So we kept this child the next weekend. It started turning that every weekend we had this child. And this started in January. In the end of March, Jason's uncle had told us on Saturday. Yes, he got us on Saturday and told us, hey, we need to talk tomorrow. I told Jason, I said, we have bonded so much with this little kid, and he's going to not need our services for him anymore. And so we sat down with Jason's uncle that afternoon, that Sunday afternoon, and he said, I think I'm ready for you to adopt Brayden. I had gone from this whole prayer of maybe we'll get pregnant, maybe we'll have a child, to what I felt God was saying, no, it's not meant for you. To now God has put before us this child that, we had seen milestones that we had grown to love, that we had started bonding with. I think Jason and I both cried all the way back to church that afternoon. It was a prayer of thanksgiving. We quickly found a lawyer to deal with the adoption, and that itself came with 15-day waits, 30-day waits, a lot of prayer to God that, if this was meant to be, it would be. We were supposed to adopt him, and the adoption was supposed to be finalized in August, and we got word that the week before his birthday that the judge was ready to sign. We were ready. Still have his adoption day outfit. People keep their child's outfit that they bring home or her home from in the hospital. Have a white polo shirt, some striped shorts. They're for a 1-year-old. God has just been throughout 5 years of praying, of waiting, has always been there. For anyone that's going through this, your prayer life has got to be strong. If not, you're going to fall apart. And then you're going to rely on other things that aren't going to get you where you need to be. Church was that was our group. They understood what we were going through. They asked us the tough questions. They prayed for us. They prayed with us. Whenever we found out we were adopting Brayden, they rejoiced with us. At church the Sunday after we adopted Brayden, they said a prayer of thanksgiving. The Wednesday we found out we could adopt Brayden, the church, prayed that we would find peace during that time that we were going to have to go through. If I hadn't put God first, I wouldn't have found the peace that I needed, which would not have led me to the joy that I was able to experience. Brayden is a wonderful young boy now. And I had prayed early on in life that, dear God, give me these kids and I'll raise them up in the nurture and admission of you. They will be at church. They will get involved in church. And although I only have one child, he's here. And this is his little family. He calls all the other little boys here his brothers. And one day they'll be spiritual brothers. And that is our hope and our prayer for Brayden, that he grow up to be a Christian, that we live our life to be a Christian example for him. You ladies, you family units that are going through this, start your day with prayer. Be thankful that you have God to lean on during that time. We went from the answer of wait to what we thought was no, to God just saying, guess what? It's my time and my plan, and this is the plan I have for you. And so just have the patience, have the trust, have the faith that God that's going to carry you through this. Church is awesome because they pray too. And they have the faith that sometimes when you have those low moments, the Bible tells us to bear one another's burdens, and they will bear it with you. I'm grateful for my journey, as hard as it was, because it brought me closer to God. I'm Brandie Nolan.